This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing. Runway 7, Bravo.
All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter. This is not a drill.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I'll give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. So let's waste no time, folks. Let's get to it. Story number 1. How are local gyms doing? Go work out, get your workout on. Area gyms have been quietly operating under the COVID-19 radar, but could serve as a vital tool in defeating this virus. Yes, if you didn't know, not only does practicing good health keep you active, but it strengthens your immune system, which is vital to defeating a very contagious disease. If you did not know, some people did know that this is possible when going to the gym. Now, after being shut down, a number of gyms have stayed open and busy trying to follow guidelines handed down by the state. Many area local gyms have tried to meet member demands while also trying to stay in business. So if you're out there and you want to find a way to defeat this virus, the gym could be the first step. It could be your cure, and that's why story number 1 made it in this week. Story number 2. Fracking is back in the headlines. An article informing local residents about the radioactive risk of fracking is a good read. It's a good article, a good read. The headline's main focus is on a substance known as T-norm, or that's an acronym, or technically enhanced naturally occurring radioactive material that could be piling up in Ohioans' backyards unknowingly. So it could be right in your backyard. Now, the naturally occurring radioactive material is used for commercial purposes, but activists are doing everything that they can to educate the public about these harmful substances. The detailed article can be found in the Mediator, and it made it in this week because of the latest the lasting concerns about fracking. Not only just the latest news, but the lasting concerns about fracking. If you don't know what fracking is, I encourage you to get educated about it. It's about when you're going under the earth to drill and things start shaking up and the land, the faults start moving, you get oil from underneath the earth. That's all involved in fracking. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3. Another Ohio health director up to bat. In the midst of COVID-19, Ohio has seen its fair share of health directors. First, it was Amy Acton, who later stepped down, and now Mike DeWine has announced another health director. Bruce T. Vanderhoff has been announced as the new health director for Ohio. Vanderhoff will replace Stephanie McLeod. This is the third health director that Ohio has seen in the midst of COVID-19. Vanderhoff has previously served as chief health director of the Ohio Department of Health. So that's why this story made it this week. Made it to number 3. Or if you go backwards, probably number 5. Story number 4. Local educators preparing for another school year with COVID-19 still around. CEO Justin Jennings talked about his plans to local news outlets, voicing his strategy for the next school year. In this story, he talked about masks and making the right adjustments when it comes to students protecting themselves from COVID-19. COVID-19 forced the school district into remote learning last year and postponed and shortened school sports programs, and really did a lot of damage. Now, some districts are still split on whether to make it mandatory for students to wear masks. This growing debate is what got this story in. Just about every school district has gone through the extreme to protect their students from COVID-19, so I don't see story number 4 leaving the news anytime soon, especially around this time of year. Story number 5, a backlog of court cases and the cost of filling up Ohio's prisons. One story that we could be sleeping on is the backlog of justice cases and how to stop Ohio prisons from filling up. This is a very sad story. Now, this story is on everybody's mind who has somehow been tangled up in the justice web and continues to haunt. This story continues to haunt area residents that have been affected by criminal justice issues, especially when people get out who have mental health issues and they kill other people. Now, what is keeping the story alive is prevention. How do you prevent violent crimes from occurring? And does this prevention have anything to do with the release of criminals back into society? Now, the constant crime wave is what got the story in, and the fact that people who are incarcerated feel like even when they get out that there is no hope. And not only is this story staying alive, but it is probably on a lot of people who are incarcerated's mind, because a lot of people want justice, and when you have these cases, some people do things that other people wouldn't normally do, but that's what the justice system seems to be all about. That's why story number 5 made it this week, because people who are doing their time and they get out, they feel like it's just worthless for them to even get out. So there's a lot happening inside the story, and that's why it made it to the top 8 this week. The criminal justice system is on the radar big time. Story number 6. Ohio has to find out how to defeat an invisible enemy somehow. COVID-19 cases are still rising, and Ohio, like many other states, have just about done everything to defeat an invisible enemy. Discussions to defeat COVID-19 have been so extreme that just about every country and every county and every state leader has dried up funding sources to stop the spread of a disease with a high survival rate, but some people don't make it. So very sad story. Now, this story alone shows how area residents have been confused and harmed trying to defeat something that seems inevitable to spread. It seems like it's almost impossible to stop. Now, as long as COVID-19 stays in the headlines, this story will remain a hot topic, especially with the debates going on about the vaccines, mandates, and all types of other crazy talk surrounding this virus. That's why story number 6 made it in this week. Story number 7 in the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it in this week. Lots of accidents and busy emergency crews. It's a big headline. Safety concerns about driving, riding motorcycles, and what it takes to have a home are on the radar. Emergency crews have been very busy trying to aid those hurt in preventable accidents, what they would call preventable accidents. Now, a 63-year-old man lost his life in Hartford after driving off of the side of the road. The man's injuries later resulted in his death at a Brookfield hospital. There have been several top headline stories in circulation this year regarding safety mishaps resulting in tragic endings. Now, local emergency crews have been all over the place trying to assist those in need of their services. The key talking point in this story, and the key point, main idea, is that sometimes we all feel invisible, even me as the mediator, but we still have to try to conserve our own life, if that makes any sense. Story number 8 in the top local headline and developing news story that made it this week. Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. Time thinking ahead. It was coming up what it used to be. What will it take to end Ohio's violent culture? Story number 8. Take a lot. Ohio is filled with good stuff, but crime could be holding us back from our fullest potential. Ohioans and people across the local environment. This is happening especially locally. Now, local residents have been all over the place trying to keep Youngstown and Ohio local areas on the right course for a better future. Some have failed, some have succeeded. Ohio is just one of many states seeing a slight spike in crime. Columbus is just one example. The city's homicide rates have doubled this year compared to previous years. The number of violent incidents in Columbus and Youngstown are mind-boggling, and this doesn't include other big cities and counties in the state. Public officials seem very aware of the problem, but are having a hard time implementing a solution. Drugs have also been a problem for many law-abiding citizens searching for answers. Once again, a story like this topped out all stories. And that's why story number 8 made it to the top this week. Can't we all just get along? So many things to do, so many things to say, so many people to love. Why choose violence? Well, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. You're the Mediator. Me, Brian West. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. It was my first year playing high school football. It was about 1998. Me and my cousin were on the same team. I'll never forget it. The season was brand new. The field, turf, I was ready. The first game of the season. The weather was terrible. Rain everywhere. I was playing tight end. My cousin was playing quarterback. I went out for a quick slant, wide open in the end zone. My cousin looked at me and decided not to throw me the ball. Instead, he threw an interception. Oh, I was heartbroken, devastated. At that moment, I knew that to be a somebody, you had to be around people who believe in you, that you can be a somebody. Everything else is irrelevant. If people don't believe in you, if you don't believe in the people around you, you're not anything to the team. And that's how I decided that day. That's how I came into myself that I would become the mediator. And that's my story, folks. I'm sticking to it. Even family can let you down. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Do you blame America's culture for a path of dead bodies and filled up prisons? Big headline. For years, justice reform activists have been looking for a solution to America's still growing criminal justice problem. The argument comes from both sides of the fence because criminals are involved in this debate also. Now, we could be seeing the lasting effects of gang wars and criminal activity in the constant crime wave hitting mainstream headlines. Now, 2 New York City men have been freed after 30 years in prison, according to a Fox News report, after a judge overturned a murder conviction, throwing more fuel on the pressure that keeps overwhelming the criminal justice system, especially when those who have been in prison for so long and could have possibly been innocent. Some of them are innocent. Nobody knows. Some of them are innocent to proven guilty, but I'm sure you get the picture. One simple question that is keeping this story alive is, how do you stop filling up prisons? How do you stop the crime? How do you stop it, especially in America, the country that incarcerates more people in the world, a lot of people in jail? And that's why story number 1 made it in this week. We have to do something about the growing crime and the growing prison population. Big headline, sleeping headline. Story number 2. Market watchers are very nervous. Stock and business enthusiasts seem very concerned about the American markets. Now, watchers are focusing on alarming trends taking place in the battle to defeat COVID-19. One CNBC headline talks about how an all-star investor cited this week that how he is he's scared about the biggest bubble of his career. He's saying it, and he's afraid. So he's trying to warn people about how the market may be in the biggest bubble of his career. He also cited in the report that this could be bigger than the housing and .com bubble. If you do your research, take some time, read about this stuff. It's real. Articles like this are keeping market watchers very nervous as people try to stay optimistic. And that's why story number 2 made in this week. Optimism sometimes plays a good role in an investor's life, because where there is hope, there will be money spent. You better believe it. Story number 3. What does a $1 trillion annual tax gap mean? One CNBC report says that the tax gap will help pay for the $1 trillion infrastructure bill. Now, the story talks about several financial sources from spending, which include providing the IRS with nearly $80 billion to close the tax gap. Now, let me iron this out for you. So basically what the story is saying is that Congress will beef up the IRS to recoup $700 billion worth of additional tax revenue over the next decade to pay for the infrastructure bill. Now, the story has government accountability and people doing taxes on the radar. Just to iron this out so you get the picture. It's almost like saying if you did not pay taxes years ago, the government could be coming after you using the IRS to help pay for a $1 trillion infrastructure bill. I hope that makes sense. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Big headline. Story number 4. Climate change is another bill too high to pay for. The climate change bill is high and has already come at a cost. One CNN business report is now putting the pressure on corporations. The fact is that the pressure has already been on corporations, and iPads along with electric vehicles are the proof. That means that somebody invented all this stuff to save the trees and ended up inventing an iPad, which probably cost the plant their life. Now, with so many stories focusing on wildfires, global warming, and fossil fuels, this story is staying alive because we seem to be going in circles and getting nowhere. Climate change has also shifted the focus in the job arena. What people fail to read and inform of themselves about in this story could cost us all, because there are pros and cons coming from each side. But the main concern is that if climate change is real, how do we stop it? Or is it too late? That's why story number 4 made it this week. Well, those are our top 4 international headlines that made international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I'll be right back with the top 4. So don't go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well.
If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com. Method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I had just got done doing Shakespeare in the Park. My uncle had came in town. We got this huge discussion, huge debate, and we were in a room with Obama and Trump supporters. They were getting into it, fighting it out, scrambling on the ground, and they got upset with me because they thought I had voted for Trump, and I said, no, I voted for Ben Carson. They couldn't believe it, they said. And one of the Obama supporters in the back of the room yelled, he said, "Who the hell is Ben Carson?" That's when I knew, at that moment, that America had a political problem. You got to know who you're voting for. You got to know who's doing what. You got to be informed. At that moment, I went to the back of the room and I told the guy that as a mediator, I don't pick sides. I don't choose a candidate. I look at the inner being. And if Ben Carson could walk on water, which I seen him do, then that's the closest to Jesus that we're going to get. And he didn't win. But I was a witness that Ben Carson was as close to a candidate to the Savior that we were going to get. Ooh, ooh. And that's when I became an activist. And I started advocating for peace. And I started spreading the gospel of mediation. And I stayed away from politics after that. Because after that day, the fighting stopped. And everybody started to use their brain when voting. Neurosurgeons can fix anything. Vote for Ben. That's my story, folks. And I'm sticking to it. Let's get to it. Story number 5. Mixed opinions about Americans' foreign affairs. Big headline. There's mixed opinions about the story. This is a big headline. America has intervened in just about every war in Afghanistan, Iraq, and the Middle East, period, are growing proof on how the ripple effect of what being a world power means. The Afghan war is getting out of hand, especially once you depart and have to go back to help people. America's growing entanglements and global issues have led to so many policy shifts from each administration that the topic at hand seems to be far from over. Now, it's far from even being solved. Now, Iraq is still on the brink of collapsing. The Taliban is taking hold in Afghanistan, and the constant pressure surrounding Israel and the Palestinians is also a topic of concern. Now, other foreign affairs stories, including secured borders, keeping the border secure, growing conflicts in Africa and Europe constantly on the radar, and the continued rise of China, who has been in headlines making deals with Iran lately. If you don't remember, some time back, Russia has also been in the headlines in regard to strategic alliances. Now, with so many stories surrounding global affairs, there are mixed opinions keeping these stories alive. Now, the simple fact surrounding this story is that when one nation is conquered, another nation seems to rise. And sometimes people involved with those nations are left with a bill that nation that was conquered or the nation that rises can't even pay. And that's why story number 5 is so important. A lot of lives have been lost, and some people want to understand why and what for. And at the moment, there aren't too many answers. That's why story number 5 made it this week. Story number 6. The jobs are here, but where are the workers? A number of stories about the job market have been in circulation. The numbers are mind-boggling. They're frightening, they're scary, concerning. In a report by NBC, the number of jobs available have shot up above 10 million in June. So that means that the jobs available are above 10 million jobs, and with 8.7 million people looking for work. So how do you feel those jobs? There are so many questions keeping the story alive because something happened in the transition from the shutdowns until now. Something took place. Now, if the virus has limited people from working, those looking for help want answers. And analysts keep talking about what people are doing. What could they be doing if they're not returning to work? How are they paying the bills? Some people have decided to open their own business while others just given up. Some people have returned to their old bad habits. Either way, the story is staying in the headlines. The jobs are there, but people aren't just showing up, and that's why story number 6 almost made it to the top 2 this week. Story number 7 in the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. What's in the infrastructure bill? $550 billion in new spending, federal money into physical infrastructure projects such as roads, bridges, passenger rails, drinking water, and wastewater systems. Other details in the bill have yet to be released, which could be why so many eyes are on how this bill will be accounted for. In the passage of this bill, America could see government spending balloon even more, but economists could see some serious economic activity in regards to jobs, construction, and industrial spending. This could almost be similar to the Great Depression times in this bill. That means the government could come to the aid by putting people to work, but how long will it last? Now, this debating talking point is what's keeping this story alive, and we got it in this week. Almost made it to the top because everybody's got their eye on this bill, because if it all goes through as planned, that means that the government could be spending more money to put in your pockets to possibly stimulate the economy. But how long will it last before we have to pay for what we're paying for? Going in circles once again. Big headline. Story number 8 and the top international headline and developing news story that made it this week. The word for today is different. Different is good. Money, inflation, and how COVID-19 is breaking the bank. What does this have to do with different? Because only different can save us from doing the same thing and making the same mistakes. Pay raises, gone. Savings, gone. The dream vacation, gone. Inflation is breaking people and the banks, all at the cost of dealing with COVID-19, which is different. So it will take different people to stop this different kind of virus. Inflation is affecting just about every aspect of business and has really been the dagger in the throat of poor families. Some seem hopeless. Now, banks have had to account for strict lending, and payday lenders have had to account for high interest rates, which is where a lot of borrowers have been hanging out, the payday lending places. Not even just that, but the cash advances, the loans, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The high interest market, which you can pay back at no penalties. The money game is creating different ways to do business, and COVID-19 now has a lot of people praying for a blessing. So story number 8, it will take different thinking to maneuver around this money and inflation problem that has COVID-19 breaking the bank. The money has to move. It has to be recycled. It has to be printed and spent. And that's why story number 8 made it to the top this week. Well, those are our top 8 local headlines and international that made it this week. I hope you got something out of today's program. I always get something out doing the research. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines. You deserve all the credit. I'm just the mediator, the man hanging out in the middle, stuck in the middle, if you want to be specific. And if you want to show some support, stuck in the middle. It doesn't take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Every little bit counts. If you want to show some support here at Method 8, just go to the website. You know what to do. Well, I'll be back next week looking through over 200 or more stories just for you to keep you informed. I want to thank you for tuning in this week to Mediator with me, Brian West. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe and be good. Have a good week, everybody. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.